Welcome back. Picking up where we left off, we're getting ready for painting. After disassembling the model, every part is cleaned with isopropyl alcohol. Next step, priming. I'm using Mr. Finishing Surfacer Black, as it leaves a very smooth finish. Of course, it's thinned with Mr. Leveling Thinner. The airbrush is clean and actually works, so we're good to go. I try to spray in thin layers to avoid flooding the surface. I also masked off the wheel contact points to make gluing them later easier. And now, here's how not to paint models. This one's going straight into my cringe compilation. Watch this idiot waste time because he didn't know how to deal with AK paints. What you're about to see is completely pointless. I'll end up repainting the whole model back to primer, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. With these Tamiya paints I started doing some pre-shading for the upcoming colors. Highlighting the centers of the panels and keeping the edges black creates artificial shadows and add depth to the base coat. I've always done post-shading instead of pre-shading. I wanted this to be my first pre-shaded model, but it wasn't meant to be. One of the main reasons I wanted to try pre-shading is that the model at this stage looks amazing, almost like a game render. Anyway, meet the main culprit behind this mess, AK Interactive paints, specifically made for modern Russian camouflages. These paints are actually great, the colors are accurate and you don't need to mix anything. I started with green base coat. At this point I only had paints and thinner. Guys on Facebook told me, yeah, they work great in the airbrush, just thin them 2:1 bro. At first it was fine, I even managed to paint the hull and started working on turret, but the paint flow kept decreasing. Then came the first clog. I cleaned the airbrush and kept going. I switched back to Tamiya paints to do rubber side skirt and wheel bandages. Then, with the help of Quick Wheels mask for Trumpeter T-92s, I started painting the wheels, and boom, second clog. I started to suspect something was wrong, but I cleaned it again and pushed on. The AK green looks beautiful though. Now it's time for the camouflage patterns, loosely based on the box art. This time I picked up some paint retarder to help with clogs. Before airbrushing, I decided to sketch out the camo edges with a brush first. With airbrush and with paint thinned out and mixed with grime retarder, I began to fill those camo patterns. And clogged for the third time. Now the airbrush is sputtering like crazy. I'm struggling to get proper coverage, I just can't make it work. I gave up on the sand color for a bit and started painting the black camo sections instead. I tried to cover the paint sputters with brush. Then I gave the sand color another shot with the airbrush. Guess what? Clogged again. At this point, with paint job looking like this, I was very close to losing it. I was done. This build seriously tested my patience. I was mad at the AK paints, but I didn't give up on them completely. You'll see in the future builds that I eventually learned how to use them properly. But for this model, the AK paint era was over. Back to the trusty Mr. Finishing Surfacer. Time to clean the airbrush again, and this time I started painting the tank with Rage. I had to recreate the AK color scheme using my beloved, beautiful, easy-to-use Tamiya products. I mixed up few shades and eventually I came up with my own personal formula for modern Russian green. No fancy pre-shading now. I'll just stick to post-shading like I usually do. All that mental gymnastics with AK paints cost me couple hours. Here it took 4 minutes. But yeah, at least the proper video starts now. Next up, the sand color camo patterns. Man, it's nice to have an airbrush that doesn't clog. I'm trying to recreate box art camo, so I am painting the edges and then I'll fill them up with paint. And the base colors are done. Now time for some post shading. I lightened the base colors and sprayed the center panels to create highlights and depth. Yeah, I still can't be bothered to mix the paint outside the airbrush. One of the bad habits that caused all those AK paint failures. I go in with even lighter tone for extra highlights. And just like that, the tank is fully painted with base colors. To prep for the next steps, I seal everything with gloss varnish. Gloss varnish helps with decals. The decals I used aren't historically accurate, I just picked ones that looked cool. I promise I'll build a historically accurate model one day, just not today. I set the decals using Tamiya Mark Fit Strong. Since the model is sealed with gloss, it's a good time for pin wash. I use Tamiya panel line wash and apply it generously. I'll clean off the excess with enamel thinner later. Every detail on tank is touched upon with pin wash. And with enamel thinner we are cleaning all the excess pin wash that has spilled around. For paint chipping I gave AK paints another shot. I lightened the camo colors and used sponge to apply chips that match each camo section. Then I enhanced the sponge chips. I painted more of them, connected them and added scratches using a fine brush. It's a good idea to add chips in most sensible places like panel edges, hatches, everywhere where the real tank would get scratched in real life. Those little rubber covers were painted with black. And going back to rubber side skirts, I simulated paint flaking off the flexible side skirts using a sponge. I figured that paint would come off in large chunks from those rubber areas. Continuing with the chipping saga, I will be filling the bigger chips with metal colors. For the fenders I used flat aluminum and for steel parts I mixed whole red with neutral grey. Chipping the whole tank will take some time, so it's highly advisable to use drying retarder, so the paint will last for longer. I'm adding a layer of rusty tones inside the previous chips. The sponge patterns help guide the brush, making the process easier. Same thing with aluminum parts. Just a note, on T-series tanks the fuel tanks and storage bins are made of aluminum, so don't put rust there. I mean, you can put rust on the aluminum, but that would look silly, right? The gun mantle cover was painted with AK canvas tone and brownish green. Even though they are usually painted with camouflage, I wanted it to contrast with the rest of the tank, so I went with those stones to make it pop. These stones, not those stones, these stones. I used the same color for the back on the hatch-mounted MG, the one for spent casings. To ease up the transitions between colors, I used the dark wash later. To finish the chipping process, I will be applying washes over chips. Rust wash for steel and smoke wash for aluminum. It looks awful at first, but after quick blending with enamel thinner, it all comes together. This is a classic trust the process moment. Gently tap the paint with enamel thinner. The more you tap it, the less paint will remain, so you can control the opacity of the effect. At this point I was mentally exhausted, so I simplified the track painting. I sprayed them with whole red, then dry brushed with metallic silver. Dry brushing is a great method to add highlights. In this case, it makes the tracks look much more metallic. Next, I use track wash from Ammo. And then I took one of my enamel rust paints and started speckling the track with rust. Since I already had metallic silver on hand, I also painted the contact points of the idler rear and the drive sprocket. Those parts polish themselves from rolling, so they shouldn't be rusty. Same color for the inside of the headlight. One day I'll get proper chrome. Final touch, painting the tip of the barrel red. Now that I'm thinking, I should have checked if red barrel tip is historical for all T-series tanks or is it just uniquely Polish thing. Now it's time to make everything dirty and ugly. To protect the paint job, I sealed everything with varnish. First layer of weathering, a very thin buff color to simulate dust buildup. I'm using heavily thinned Tamiya buff paint, and of course I'm focusing on the lower parts of the tank. Then I sprayed pigments all over the hull. Still in my too much pigment phase, so it looked messy. But this area will be mostly hidden behind wheels and fenders, so it's not a big deal. I used 3 different pigment colors for variation. I think I fixed them with enamel thinner because I ran out of actual pigment fixer. After that, I applied another dust layer to tone everything down and tie the colors together. To add more variation, I used some enamel paint. Let me check what was that. Well, that was probably a damp earth or just earth from Ammo. Paint was spread over the pigments and lately it was blended with enamel thinner. I also applied it with speckling technique. The only thing to do now is to cover the whole model in flat varnish. Now the final step is gluing in the lights and painting the Shtora sensors with clear red. And that's it, the model is done. Time for it to go on the shelf. With this being my first model finished for the channel, you've probably noticed this is not a super serious channel. The videos are a bit chaotic. Well, it was my first time filming, editing and recording voiceover. I hope to improve in the future. In the meantime, I'd really appreciate any feedback. I've already recorded a few more videos, so by future feedback, I mean future. Besides building and painting tanks, I also plan to film competitions and exhibitions, and with one of my future builds I want to enter my first ever modeling competition. The next project is going to be something dumb. A what if they never abandoned the KV-1 tank and kept using it to this day kind of thing. Basically meaning that I will be building KV tank with Contact 1 reactive armor, because I wanted to do some kit bashing for a long time. Hope to see you soon. Oh right, I forgot to show you this and to record this. This is how the AKS-74U came out. Okay, now is really the end. See you soon.